Well, hello and welcome to you wherever you are joining us from across our network of churches. Thank you for taking this time in your day as you commute maybe home from work, or maybe you're cooking dinner, maybe you're going for a run, maybe you're having an early morning coffee. But whatever you're doing, I pray this moment for you is one in which God prompts you further in your own spiritual formation and inspires you from the journey of other leaders that we'll hear from today about their context and story and ministry. It's been a minute since we convened a collective conversation in the form of a podcast, and there's a topic that's risen to the surface and remained on the lips of many in our network that we think just has so much more left to offer us and is worth us sitting together and listening and thinking about a bit more deeply. So I'm Josh Gibbon, I'm the communications leader for our network resource team, and I'm excited today to invite you to a conversation that's going to ask the question, what's required of us as leaders to resist being heroes and embrace the posture of host in our communities? Welcome to Collective Conversations.
Welcome Naomi and Jeff and Josh to this conversation. It's a gift to be able to meet online this morning, coming from our places and our homes. And so I thought it might just be nice to start by acknowledging that this morning. So I'm coming from Dharawal country in the suburb of Caringbah in the Sutherland Shire, and near the river, Port Hacking River, and the bushlands. So, Gnomes, where are you coming from?
Yes, well, I'm coming from a place that the mountains are surrounded us, have snow on them this morning. Yeah. So, Ngunnawal land in Canberra, so I'm in Belconnen there, and Ngambri country as well. So, beautiful place to live, but a very cool place in winter.
Mm. And Jeff?
Yeah, I'm on Darkinjung country with coastal lakes and ocean. And I think at the moment the whales are heading past and on their way up north. Yeah, Central Coast, New South Wales.
Beautiful. And Josh, you're just down the road from
Just down the road from you, Kym. Yeah. Dharawal country, Engadine, and just bordering the national park, which I love. Love exploring the Royal National Park down here.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, we do acknowledge country this morning, and we acknowledge the traditional owners, custodians of the land, and the gift that we have to be having this conversation on country this morning. It is a gift to be here with you all. I've been looking forward to this conversation since Collective and some of the reading and the work I've been in since then. I thought it might be good to start by this conversation by talking about our experience at Collective of open space technology and of Michael Woods and his leadership, or facilitation perhaps is a better word, in that space. So could I start there by asking you what it was like for you to be a part of that space and to experience a really quite different gathering, I feel like, last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he was just really disarming as a leader. Most conferences or gatherings that you go to, you can clearly see the person up the front leading in a particular way. But the way he got down amongst us, and he led very quietly, but with a lot of intention. But even getting off the stage and walking around and then stopping, it's like all of the rules that we're used to were being thrown away. And so it was quite a beautiful experience, but it was quite jarring as well to sort of go, well, what is going to happen with somebody opening a space in this way? You know, is this going to be chaos? It was I was just loved watching him, and I found him very playful in the way that he was able to lead us in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And he was kind of fun and funny, wasn't he? Like in that sort of like dry, quiet, understated way, but without making it all about him. And I think that was, you used the word disarming, and I think that's what it's about. So here's this guy who's like our keynote, who doesn't really do much or any keynoting at all, other than giving us enough information to step into a process together. And I think part of what was disarming about him is that it obviously was not about him, that he was curating a space that was about one another more than it was ever about him. I think, it wasn't often that he was up on the stage, was it? Like only insofar as that communication could be effective. I think he spent far more time like among, like around, curating, conversing. And so it was an interesting thing. Like I think if we came with an expectation of a presentation or a keynote, it upended those kinds of expectations.
Mm-hmm. And Josh, I'm interested from your perspective, because you were involved in sort of coordinating and had responsibility for the space. What was it like for you?
It was a roller coaster, Kym, not going to lie. I because I didn't have any frame of reference for what open space was before meeting Michael, and we had him, in some of our planning meetings a few times, and we kept asking him questions like, but what happens if someone says this? So what happens if someone, doesn't want to do this? And he just went, that's okay. What happens, happens. And I was always quite confronted by that idea. I was like, but what if what happens isn't good, and you're just always going to worst case scenario, I feel like. At least I was. And I don't think it was until he stopped his presentation in the round, and when I say presentation, is facilitation of how this process was going to work and set everything up for us, and then pass the mic over. It wasn't until that moment that I was like, oh, this is going to work. And it was when you could just feel in the room an energy swell. And I honestly probably wasn't expecting it in some ways. I was going, I wonder if people are going to rise to this. I wonder if people are going to want to lean into this. And we did. And suddenly people were up on their feet. They were moving over to a wall and taking a microphone and grabbing sticky notes. And it was so clear people wanted to be part of this.
Even I think you used the word in there, if this is going to work. And so like there's our expectation right there, isn't it? It's like, is this going to work? Like is this going to achieve the objectives, or is it going to perform the way that we want it to perform? And so like we kind of come in with all this expectation of is this thing going to work, which is performative rather than participatory, isn't it? It's interesting.
That's right.
So from that moment, there was a lot of curiosity of like, what is behind this whole thing? What is this about? What have we just been in? And so that led, I think, Josh, to organising the webinar we had with Michael Wood, which was all around the topic of moving from hero to host, is how he termed it, which is just such simple language for such, a profound shift, I think, that I'm noticing people talking about everywhere. They might not be using that language, but this is kind of, it feels like this is the moment we're in. And so I wasn't able to be part of that conversation, but I know that the three of you were part of that webinar, and we're quite engaged in that night. And so that's why we wanted to kind of invite you into this space this morning, just to hear and to dig into that idea and that shift from hero to host a little bit further. So Naomi and Jeff, I'd love to hear, like, what's drawing you? Like, why did you say yes to coming this morning, to being here, to, making yourself vulnerable and digging into this conversation and sharing a bit about that from your own experiences? I'd love to hear more of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm someone that's grown up in the church, so I've seen church evolve over the years, but when you're in a system, it's hard sometimes to get a real understanding of what's going on there. But what I am seeing in more recent years is the systems that I've known and invested in myself are dying or changing greatly. And so there's this idea that something is shifting. What do we need to learn? And personally, I think that idea of the hero I kind of engaged with that right from the moment I considered stepping into leadership, because I was watching other leaders, and I saw a tendency in people to either put them on a pedestal and expect them to come up with, everything, or they become the scapegoat if things don't go the way that they should. And so I remember saying to my supervisor at the time, I don't know if I want this job because I've seen leaders treated in both of these ways. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a hero. Like, how do you lead differently? Why is it that church leaders feel they have to, or why are the systems sort of skewed that way to create that kind of thing? So that idea of becoming a host or hosting leadership is so appealing to me. It makes more sense to me as a person and as a leader. So, yeah, that's why.
I think for me, I ended up having like a really strange privilege coming out of Collective, because Michael was heading up to the Central Coast to visit his brother, and his brother turns out that he lives like a few minutes away from my place, and so got to have a car ride with Michael, nice, from Collective all the way back up to the Central Coast, and it was one of the most wonderful car journeys I think I've ever had. And so there was a beautiful alignment on a whole range of things, and I thought, here's somebody who's seeing further and more clearly on a particular range of things that feel to be very relevant, not only to Coast community, but also to what I believe is my kind of domain of interest and incitement and interest and assignment. And so there was a bit of a convergence there. Wonderful car ride. He was very, very generous. And so then when the opportunity came up for the online conversation a few weeks ago, that was a fairly easy choice for me. And I think where some of the resonance was Michael's conversation about hero to host was putting some extra language to what we had observed at Collective. And so his role was a hosting role. It was a facilitating role. He was creating environments and context where truth and humanity and dialogue and ideas and things would emerge quite naturally. And so there was a lovely alignment there with my own interest in leadership, my own study and work in that regard, and exactly what we were trying to explore and navigate through at Coast. So I've found Michael, the example that he's brought, the concepts that he has brought, to be incredibly relevant, incredibly timely, and have also found it to be a real confirmation, a real affirmation of some of the trajectory that we've been on for a little while. And so I consider it to be a real grace and a provision.
So I'm hearing from both of you, something's being named and experienced here, but it's not. It's something that you're already in. That it's kind of unfolding. And it was an affirmation and encouragement of that, and then maybe being drawn further in that way or in that direction.
Yeah, I think it was just affirming to kind of hear that there are other ways of doing things, in fact, better ways of doing things, and that we don't have to be fearful about it. Michael was very playful in the way that he led, and he's just very calm, and he's comfortable with silence and with questions that can't be answered. And so I think often in leadership, we haven't created those spaces. Questions have to be answered. Lists have to be ticked off. We have to find someone for that role. And so the systems have become quite anxious. And so to peel that away and say there's a different way, there's a deeper listening, there's others in the room that have something to say, that are hearing something of God's plan for this time. And some of the structures we've had haven't allowed them to have a voice. or for us all to have space to hear, because we're too busy in that drivenness mode, particularly with systems that are shrinking. It's like the heat has been turned up. And the fear in me is that the church, I think we're witnessing the death of a particular way of being church.
Yeah.
And something new has to emerge. But so often we get confused and think we're witnessing the death of the church, and we are not. It's Jesus's church, and
That's right.
he has plans for it.
Yes.
He has a way through this time. We're just in a moment of history.
Yeah.
It's like, how are we going to steward this moment of history? How are we going to seek the deep wisdom and the understanding that's needed, rather than railing against it, the change and trying to hold ground, which is not actually the ground. It's already been washed away. Something new is ahead. And having the courage to go there. I think it's incredibly difficult because we're so wed to the way we've done church or the way we've been church.
Yep.
It has to fit in a particular understanding.
Yep.
And I don't think that it's where God is wanting the church to stay. And he's moving in lots of ways. And our church communities can't widen the circle of their understanding, then I fear that, there's two choices. We widen the circle of our understanding, or we close down.
Yeah.
And God's Spirit goes elsewhere to work through other people in other circumstances. I feel like it's getting to that kind of critical moment in these years that we're in now. And I fear that I lack the understanding to navigate it. I know I do. But that drives me deeper into prayer, into listening, because I don't have a plan. And that's not a very popular thing to say, but I don't. But he does, and I really believe that.
Yeah. Well,
I just feel we could all just say that out loud together. Right. I don't have a plan. I don't have a plan.
None of us have a plan.
I'm not in control.
Let's just I don't know where we're going. Let's just give each other permission.
Got to stop trying to come up with the answer to soothe the anxiety in the room. I think we've been taught that as leaders we have to soothe the anxiety in the room.
Yes.
And he did the opposite. Michael did the opposite. he just opened the can of worms and trusted God in that process of doing that. And I don't think our leadership models have allowed that space for that at all. So.
You reminded me of a moment that I had just a couple of years ago. It was in the context of a meeting, and we were talking about some of the really difficult observations about what appears to be a church in decline, and that there are local churches that are closing at an alarming rate, and so there was just a comment about the church is in decline, and I feel as though the voice of the Spirit spoke directly to me and just said, "Mine's not." And I thought, well, that's true, isn't it? The kingdom is advancing. The gates of Hades will not prevail. The church, the people of God are advancing, but our models and our structures, well, they've potentially in a lot of ways come to the end of their useful life, and they might have been relevant and appropriate for a season. And I think that was some of the stuff that was really, really helpful. So while Michael didn't necessarily name that at Collective, he did name it on the call, where he spoke about the heroic mode of leadership attached to a mechanistic worldview and a mechanistic paradigm that we've kind of well emerged from in some ways. It was a paradigm based on predictability and production. It was a factory based model where compliance and reliability and outcomes require some kind of superstructure to the whole thing. And so our church structures, followed suit, and it required some kind of a hero, boss, hierarchical leader. Well, I think we're out of that zone in terms of what we see around the planet now and how things are organised, are much more organic, much more interconnected, with a desperate desire to recover our humanity, and a different mode of leading and leadership is required. And I actually think it's a mode of leading that does help us to recover our design, does help us recover our humanity. We cannot be reduced to producers and consumers and predictable inputs and outcomes. There is something that is beautifully generative and interconnected that's baked into our, imago Dei. And so it requires a different kind of facilitation, different kinds of, so it's almost like a curation rather than direction, almost. And I feel as though that's something of what Michael was courageously showing us. And I don't know that his confidence was completely in his process. I think his confidence was in the human design, and in creating a space and an invitation and a scaffold. His confidence was in this. This is how humans are naturally shaped and created to be. That beauty, creativity, ideas, innovation will emerge out of our shared humanness, and it will be appropriate for the moment that we're in. And it was almost like we didn't believe it until we saw it.
Wow, I love what you're touching into there, Jeff, about humanity. And when I sat in that room and watched Michael, I thought about, gosh, what is going on in him that he's able to be in the room as the leader and do next to nothing and walk away with a paycheck, in a sense, like that he didn't feel the need or the impetus, or he was, connected enough to the purpose of what he was doing that he didn't have to turn up and act in a certain way. I'm wondering about that. Like, what is this shift asking of us in terms of our own formation? What is it asking about the people that we lead? That we are alongside.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of taking me to a moment some years ago where I was reading Eugene Peterson's The Pastor, I think, leading up to this. And he shares this great story about how he was meeting with his elders and his board one night, and he resigned because he's like, I can't lead this thing anymore. But what he was actually saying is that he couldn't fit into that CEO model, that the kind of person that's supposed to be across everything, like from the finances to the building to the this to that. And in fact, that's where we'd ended up as leaders. And it took me, I was looking at it, I thought, finally, there's language for me to say to my leaders, I can't do that anymore. I cannot be a CEO, and I don't think I was ever supposed to be. And I don't think the church should operate in that way. We've taken on the culture's structures and made them our own. And it's so counter to how Jesus led, the servant leadership model. He led with that circle, and that he was teaching and imparting and releasing to do what he was setting up. He was only going to be there for a short time, and so he had that was his focus. So I think for us, it really got stuck somehow in that church growth time, and I don't know what, and we didn't question it. We just, signed the job description. And then, I know that pastors have gone down time and again because they've taken on, things that aren't really them.
Yeah.
And churches have, we've started seeing the leader of the church in a particular way rather than seeing their giftedness and the kind of person they are and how that is part of the mission of that local community, but not, yeah. And so, yeah, for me that was really helpful to read that and just go to my elder and say, I can't do this stuff anymore. And I even said to them, if that means that I get paid less and work less days a week and you employ someone else to do that, then that's what I'm telling you. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because I just couldn't buy into that system any longer.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what Michael is helping us to kind of name and move beyond, hopefully, is that some of those structures that we've just taken on need to change for the church to truly flourish in a new season.
I think
I know for me, it would have killed me to stay in that model.
Yeah, you're not alone. You mentioned the word anxiety before, Naomi. It was almost like a leader takes on the responsibility of the anxiety of the people in some ways. And when I reflect on that with what we experienced at Collective is Michael almost like created an environment of anxiety and allowed it to rest and did not rescue it. And the anxiety was like a product of responsibility. So I'm not the one who's going to stand up here and be responsible for your lack of anxiety. I'm actually going to invite you into a place of participation and co-creation, which raises some anxiety. Oh, that's on me now. Like I actually have to step in and do my piece, which is probably where we're all like biting our fingers and wondering if people would do it. And then the other word that comes to mind is encourage. And encourage is to place courage within. And so that's what he did. Like he encouraged people, step into your place of responsibility and participate. And then as people anticipated, well, the anxiety dissipates because we're in community. I kind of wonder, like, oh my goodness, like how often have we like implicitly taken on this role as leaders of carrying the anxiety of the people and thinking that our job is to diminish it.
Yeah, we've been taught that.
We've been taught that, and yet the environment that Michael curated was, I'm going to encourage you to step into the anxious place of taking responsibility, and it's like, oh, that's formation. That's where actually being formed into the body and where we catalyze and synergize with one another. And I think, some of the words that are kind of bubbling in my head in terms of the nature of the role shift, and I'm going to float this, that might not be right. Accidentally, inadvertently, leaders have taken on a role of king and priest. We're supposed to be a kingdom of priests, but we've taken on a role of king and priest. And so the king gets to determine what's right and wrong. King gets to determine how the finances are used. King has some jurisdiction over a place or a people group, and is responsible for their welfare. And it's like, in leading in churches, we've taken on that king role to various degrees. And perhaps even more dangerous is taking on the priest role, which is I need a buffer between me and God. I need this interface. I need this mediator between me and God, and so that He represents God to me accurately, and that I don't know but there's a layer between me and my direct relationship with Father, Son, and Spirit, mediated by this priest. Who I can scapegoat if I need to. And yet the invitation seems to be moving to the role of gardener and curator. And so what the gardener does is create an environment where the DNA of the plants has the opportunity to emerge and be true to itself and create an ecosystem. And so planting and watering, but not responsible for the growth. It's God who grows, and the curator, because that really is what Michael was doing. And if I think about what the role of a curator in an art exhibition is, he helps the diversity of that beauty make sense together as a whole, and so that it tells a story. And I think there's almost like what does that mean if we were to shift from this leadership idea of king and priest? And Scripture's pretty clear, about about a right ordering of things there, and instead investigate this invitation to a roles of gardeners and curators. Yeah, I might play with that idea.
I really like that you've brought in that word priest, Jeff, because to me that resonates with something that's quite core to who we are as Churches of Christ, a tenet that we sort of established through, which was the priesthood of all believers. This idea of a flat structure that we're all co-ministering together. And yeah, I just feel there's something around this hero to host conversation that actually allows us to enter into that and names what's so challenging about that. And what in ourselves and our own formation and psyche can get quite stuck and lead us down a path that is not priesthood of all leaders, but towards the king model, like you just said. And it's just something I feel like, at least for me, really got me to stop and go, what does it actually mean to enter into the priesthood of all believers? And what's challenging about that?
Yeah. And the garden for me was just a beautiful image. Thanks, Jeff. I was laughing because I'm thinking about the things that God has spoken to me over recent years while all of this stuff is changing, and I'm always trying to listen really deeply because there's not many books written about what's going to happen next. It's like so you're living it out and you're watching it, and you're watching other churches struggle too, and so you're trying to find your way. And he showed me. I was reading a book called The Underground Forest by Tony Ronaldo, and talked about this discovery that he made in Africa when he was trying to plant trees and they just kept dying. Plant trees, die. They couldn't keep them alive because of the extreme there. But he stopped one day because he had an accident, and he looked at this stump of a tree that was there, still alive, but barely in the midst of this desert. And he realised that actually there was a lot more life to that tree if it was actually just tended gently, that it would emerge as a beautiful thing in that landscape, and the landscape will change. And he's actually shown that to be true. Over 5 to 10 years space, he's changed entire landscapes by putting that method in place. And I felt God say to me, I've already planted people here, but they've become dormant, or they haven't been given the nurture or the tending that would actually help them become what they could be. But they are here, Naomi, open your eyes. And so that started a journey for me in reflecting on a different way of leading and noticing and trying to see those people that were just among us already, but actually being, by our own systems and by our lack of vision, not given space to grow.
And I think we saw that, at Collective with that OST. It was the responsibility piece, Jeff, but it was also, what are you passionate about? And will you take responsibility for a conversation about what you're passionate about? So I was so encouraged to see kids leaders getting up and, people we don't normally hear from, naming their conversation and owning something because it was what they cared about, rather than, the church set up where it's like, here's all the jobs I need done as the king. Can you sign up on my roster? And, we wonder why people don't want to volunteer.
That's right. Well, I don't think there are any volunteers in the kingdom of God. Like volunteer is like unpaid labour. It's almost like it's the wrong idea. Getting people to do things and not paying them, and it's like a different motivation, it seems.
I'm reminded too, as you talk about that idea of gardener, I was in the story at Easter of Mary after, Jesus is resurrected, and she's in the garden and she mistakes Jesus. Well, the way it's always been taught to me, she mistakes Jesus as the gardener. But I'm like, what if it wasn't a mistake?
Yeah.
What if Jesus was revealing himself in a different way as a gardener to him? And when he calls his name, she sees him. Oh, Jesus, you're the gardener.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm left, Kym, at this point in the conversation wondering, what is it for us as leaders that's so challenging to become the gardener? I'm wondering if we could maybe just reflect on that together for a moment. I think, Kym, you had, apart from a a book or a reading that we've done around this hero to host stuff that reflects on that idea. Maybe we could read that and reflect on this together as we come towards a close soon.
Yeah, let me read this brief excerpt from the Margaret Wheatley article that I'm sure we can pop a link in with the episode. Many of us get caught up acting like heroes, not from power drives, but from our good intentions and desires to help. Are you acting as a hero? Here's how to know. You're acting as a hero when you believe if you just work harder, you'll fix things. That if you just get smarter or learn a new technique, you'll be able to solve the problems for others. You're acting as a hero if you take on more and more projects and causes and have less time for relationships. You're playing the hero if you believe that you can save the situation, this person, or the world. Our heroic impulses most often are born from the best of intentions. We want to help, we want to solve, we want to fix. Yet this is the illusion of specialness, that we're the only ones who can offer help, service, skills. If we don't do it, nobody will. This hero's path has only one guaranteed destination. We end up feeling lonely, exhausted, and unappreciated.
Oh. Wow. Yes and amen. We have a saying in our ministry team a few years ago, whenever we noticed that hero complex emerging in any of us, we'd say to each other off the side, stop wearing your undies on the outside. like you're trying to be Superman. That was the kind of, to make us laugh, but also bring us to an understanding that we can fall into that way. And so I often, we say that to each other. I say it to myself when I realize that, what am I doing? I don't need to do that. Let it go. I can't, and I know I can't work any harder. Like, I know that when I look back over the years that I've worked here at NationsHeart, there's times where I've, worked way too hard. And the times where I've actually been able to hold things more lightly and let the anxiety be, it's difficult because people, you cop a lot as a leader, and a lot of it's not seen. And I'm a pretty tender-hearted person. And maybe people don't understand that about me, but I struggle, with some of the stuff that's said or done. And so there's a cost. But there's also, I don't think, any other way, because I can't put on the cape and, the superhero outfit. It doesn't fit me. It never did. So if I give that up, then it leaves some people feeling vulnerable. But there's no other way. There's got to be a way for them to meet those needs in a much healthier way than by looking to me. I don't have the answer. I'm not the hero. I say sometimes, if you're looking for someone to save the situation, it's not me. We have one saviour. He already did his job, so I'm following him. I can't, he's the saving one. I'm not the saving one. I'm just a servant of him. So, but yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. It challenges us because we were taught that leaders were strong and that leaders always had the answer or a plan, or, there's certain things around that word leader that are really not what somebody that is overseeing, being a shepherd of a church should actually try to be. Somehow it's gotten warped. So some of it's internal work for us as leaders, to be continuing to have voices around us, like my team that say to me, you're off track, or my supervisor or a trusted friend. And some of it is the work within the church to own where we've gotten to and how we got there and what God actually wants to do to bring greater freedom.
I think we've we've inherited a lot of patterns and frames, and ideas about, faith and the structure of church all get mushed together, and we don't necessarily know how to untangle some of those things. And I expect that some of the things that we're talking about now will be generational in their disentangling. I don't think it's going to be, it's not about just him applying a different leadership structure or philosophy. We're dealing with deeply integrated patterns and beliefs that we think are attached to our salvation, even, or our body believes that some of those things are attached to our salvation. I think one of the things that I've realised over the last couple of years too, God's means of renewal is death and resurrection. And he doesn't seem to do life support. And I'm not sure that he does resuscitation either. I think he does death and resurrection. And so in some ways, I think what we're doing at the moment, I kind of hesitate as I kind of say it. I think we're patting the hands of old models as they pass away. I think it's palliative care. I don't know that the project at the moment is about taking this and moving it to something else. I think it's potentially about the palliative care of something as it passes away, loving it, treating it with honour, as the Holy Spirit is causing a new thing to emerge in our midst. And I think some of the challenge now is that we've even talked today about like some of the language that helps us to be attentive to spot the new thing as it emerges, so that we can love it and so that we can tend it as it grows, but at the same time as we lovingly pat the hand of the old thing. I don't want that to sound patronising, but God seems to do death and resurrection, not life support.
It seems, Jeff, like that palliative care is both something in our communities, a way of being together, but also something within us as leaders, that both have to die at the same time for new life to come about. Because if one doesn't die, the other one keeps on keeping on. What I mean by that is, if your community is not ready to receive a host leader and hasn't been prepared for why that's an important thing to have to model a Jesus-like community, they will find a new hero.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Or if you're not ready to do that, you will go on leading like a hero, and your community will never learn how to be hosts together, And I'm so curious about how we do that in synchronization as a community. And I know, Jeff and Naomi, you're both exploring this in situ on the ground as you go in community. I guess I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts for maybe the rest of us as we go down that path, which will be a challenging one? Like, what's Jesus asking us to do?
I come back to the gardening again and the pruning, and Jesus made it clear that he would prune, that we must remain connected deeply to him. Remain in him was the key thing. Remain in me.
Yeah.
And that love has to cover it all. But that we would be pruned deeply, like churches that have been fruitful in the past, or whatever, we thought fruit was, will be pruned deeply in order for new growth to come. But we've bought into an idea that the church will always be growing, like we'll have this trajectory of growth. And so we're not prepared to actually think, well, actually the church is supposed to be in a different season right now. And when we're in that season, we need to be different too. We have to notice the season, adjust to the season, welcome the season. Like even, in Canberra, when I try to welcome winter, I don't do a very good job of it. It's like, welcome the season that you're in and accept it. You can't fight the season that you're in. So it is the paying attention and having space to pay attention and listen for those the deep wisdom that God wants to impart to us. Instead of grabbing for the latest thing, it's not going to do anything. It's, I guess it's like, it is the search for together, creating space that the church listens together to God, and maybe rediscovers their ability to listen. So many people just want someone else to do the listening for them. I can't hear God. You tell me what he's saying. It's like, cool. Why do you think I'm better equipped for that? I'm really not. I've got 2 ears like you do, and a heart, and I've got the Holy Spirit within. So look, as far as I can tell, we're equals. Yep. So, don't put me on a pedestal of being someone that can hear God more than you. So, but what spaces can we create where that happens together? Is for me one of the things that I think is going to have to change, and that will mean doing less. And really, that scares the church, because it's like, oh gosh, we're already shrinking. We've got to do more. We'll make ourselves bigger. Do more. It's like, and so that is incredibly challenging. But I don't think there's any other way. I think actually, yes, when God pares us right down and trims us right back, and we actually start paying better attention to him and the season we're in, something beautiful can happen.
Yeah.
But if we don't, then we're stuck. And that's really sad. But God's kingdom isn't stuck.
It's not.
And his church will go on. It's just the structures. So I think grief work is really important, and palliative care, if you call it that too. It's so important. It's so hard. It's so draining. So you need encouragement amongst that too, to kind of know that what you're grieving is actually, it's okay to let it go. Yeah. It has to be named and grieved, but we do have to let it go at some point. And that bit is, it's really hard for people. It's hard for me. It's hard for all of us. But I think the listening to God is so important for me. That's what I'd name as the highest priority of this time, which seems dumb because that should always be the highest priority. but
So good. I resonate with all of that too. I like when we're not going to strategize and 5-year plan our way through this.
No.
I think we're going to discern and respond our way through. And so that really does place a premium on listening and on obedience. I don't think we're going to come up with a 5-year plan, 5-year goals and strategies and all those sorts of things. But my goodness, do we need the lamp to our feet? We're utterly dependent on the lamp to our feet. And I think I mentioned when we were speaking before we started recording is that I've found that as we've endeavoured to do this, that not only do we receive direction, but also affirmation and confidence in the steps that we're taking. Like there is a grace of, all right, Lord, we believe that you've laid the next step out in front. And not only is it a sequence of revelations of potentially next steps, although we would love to see a lot further in the future, there's this lovely, gracious affirmation of the step that we just took. And that's just beautiful grace. I think the other thing too in recognizing that we're dealing with generational things is just how important our kids and youth ministry is at the moment, always is. But being careful not to be raising up our kids and young adults in a mode and in a model that we know has run its course, and rather provide like safe and creative and inclusive and participatory spaces that allow them to emerge as a generation that's going to be taking us forward naturally. And it's almost like that's the responsibility that we're stewarding at the moment. Is kind of like just a wrestling some kind of change in direction without even necessarily stepping into that new normal fully, but rather being really careful that we don't pass yesterday's baton to tomorrow's ecclesia.
Yes. That word, that word baton.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's what people have grown up with. And that's what I'm hearing from some of our beautiful, precious foundation members. They want to pass a baton. And I guess I came to the understanding that there is no baton anymore.
Yeah.
The baton is gone. if there ever was a baton, it probably shouldn't have been, but we're not passing batons.
I've described it as like some of our young people looking at us trying to pass the baton going, what's that in your hand?
They've said no.
It's getting all over you.
Yeah. Some of the younger leaders that were here at the time when it first started being named, they just did not want it. They said no. They didn't want the baton. So that's been the journey of these last sort of 10 years. The baton is hanging in the air and nobody wants it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty hopeful way to finish in this conversation, because I feel like there's something in this for the next generation. They're hungry for a different way of being in church. And I've been really encouraged recently, even across our network, but other churches I'm seeing, like a real uptake of Gen Z and even below, but particularly Gen Z at the moment, coming back to church and exploring, is there something here for me in the way that I understand life and the world and God? And my curiosity would be, how does this conversation help us meet them in their generational moment? How does it offer something spacious enough for them and the way that they're exploring faith to let them take ownership of something? And so, that's probably a question I'm walking away with at the moment, is like, how can I make spaces that help that generation explore and take ownership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I come back to that word playfulness and experimentation. And I think I just want to name that. And then I hear the grief work. And I think that's the dance we're in. And I feel it in my own body. I feel it in my body, my programming, that keeps wanting me to act in a certain way. And I'm in the grief of that. And then when I'm able to step into spaces, and I think, Belly and Bones was an example of this, where I invited people to join me in something I didn't really know what we were doing. But do you want to come? And we'll see what happens. And it was playful and it was joyful. It was probably the most fun I've had in leadership for a long time. And so I think we're in that dance between those two places at the moment. And it's not we can't think our way there. It's in the body. It's in the action, the response, the discernment. It's an embodied way of being. Yeah. Gosh, what a rich conversation this has been this morning.
I'm sure we can keep going.
We could. I could stay here all day with you lot and just ponder this stuff. But I do thank you for bringing yourselves in a real way to this conversation, and for the deposits that you've made into this space this morning, that I know and I'm sure everyone listening will continue to ponder. And we're going to end it here for the moment, but it's a conversation we continue to be in as a network. And I'm really interested to how all of this connects into this working vision before us, and its themes of maturity and welcome and hospitality and of untapped resources. I think all the dots are connecting for me. And so I'm looking forward to, what unfolds from here as we gather again together in November. So thank you so much. Naomi,
thank you.
Jeff.
Josh. Yep. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Kym. Thanks, Naomi. Thanks, Josh. Yep.
Wow, what a great conversation we've just had with Jeff and Naomi. I'm just so grateful for them and their time, and that they've really brought themselves in this conversation, Kym, to us, to just reflect on how they're experiencing the hero to host ideas in their setting and just in their own personal walk with God as leaders. I really, grateful for the authenticity they brought in that conversation. What about you?
Yeah, gosh, I feel one part really energized by that conversation. And it was a real joy. Like, I didn't realize that Naomi and Jeff hadn't talked to each other about this before. Like, they hadn't connected, that they were, in very different ways, journeying down a similar path and having, wrestling with similar things and experiences. And so, that's always a gift when I see those connections happen in our network. And I hope that for those people that are listening, there might be others out there that are going, like, I want to have a conversation with both of them. And I'm sure that they would welcome that. But there's other parts of my brain that are just, exploding, going, gosh, there's some real pearlers dropped in that conversation, and some real challenges and things to sit with and ponder and wrestle with. I think Jeff mentioned a couple of things. One was around the language of the past that might be loaded and unhelpful, and new language that would open portals, I think, into new ways of being. So that's certainly something very resonant for me. And I think some of the comments about the next generation, about our young people, and how we're not... Actually, I had a conversation, open space, at Collective, about the whole baton passing thing, and a sense of helping people, almost give their baton back to God, and not have this need to pass it to the next generation. And what does it look like to invite them in to play, and not to follow our old scripts. I think that's a whole area that I would love for us as a network to explore more deeply.
I was taken, particularly as Jeff was talking about this palliative care metaphor, and that God is not interested in palliative care, but he's interested in death and resurrection. And that stuck out to me because we've been in this longer story as a network around Jack Reese a number of years ago, came and talked to us about death, either by diminishment or discipleship. And, what a challenge that was to consider, but there's something that we're still entering into and working out together in conversation over a few of our gatherings. I think Michael Wood took us to a place to consider, I think, hopefully, what does a resurrection look like in a new way? And so, for the next generation, I am walking away asking that same question of, how do we pass something new onto them, a new way of being, perhaps, that suits this new generation? So, so Kym, I'm wondering now, as we conclude this time, do you have a way that we might just hold this spaciously, this conversation that's brought up so many questions, so many wonderings about the future and church and even our own formations? How are you leaving this conversation? How would you encourage us to leave it?
I think, we tapped into that feeling of anxiety in the system, in us. And, our default mechanism as a leader is to diminish the anxiety. But I actually think that being able to sit with it is part of what we need to do in this moment, to be present to it and to listen beneath it. And it, I find poetry really helpful in these times where we don't have a lot of answers, because poetry kind of tends to help us sit with questions and our experiences. And so, as we were coming into this conversation, I was reminded of a David Whyte poem called Sometimes. So I wonder if I might just read that as a way of just taking a moment to sit and be present to that anxiety, and as a way of closing this conversation.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories, who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests. Conceived out of nowhere, but in this place, beginning to lead everywhere. Request to stop what you are doing right now, and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away.
Thanks, Kym. bless you all as you go into your day, whatever else you're doing. Thank you for joining us. And we pray that this conversation has been enriching for you. Bless you.